And to provide more context on the impeachment ruling, we're joined tonight by attorney David Weinstein. He's a partner with Hinshaw and Culbertson based in Miami. He represents clients in white-collar criminal defense and fraud investigations, among other matters. He's also served as a federal and state prosecutor, spending more than a decade as assistant U.S. attorney for the Southern District of Florida. David, nice to see you.
Good to see you too, Rudabeth.
All right, so what are the chances of a criminal conviction for the former president, given how politically contentious that would be? Do you think federal prosecutors would actually pursue it?
Well, there's nothing that prohibits them from bringing criminal charges similar or including some of the same charges that he was acquitted by in his Senate impeachment trial. There's no double jeopardy here. This was an impeachment trial. And if federal prosecutors believe they can marshal enough evidence to bring criminal charges forward based on either these acts or acts that occurred at Georgia, based on the investigation they're conducting there, there's still a chance that criminal charges could be pursued. As to your question as whether or not there'd be a conviction, it'll be up to convincing 6 or 12 jurors, depending on the jurisdiction, whether or not he's guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. You don't have to have a 2/3 majority here. It'll have to be unanimous. And those jurors will have to listen to evidence and make their own decision as to whether or not he's guilty or not guilty.
But there is prosecutorial discretion, right? I mean, couldn't prosecutors decide this isn't worth it? It's going to be too divisive for the country. It could incite more violence. Maybe we just let it go. What do you see happening?
Oh, that's absolutely correct. That's one of the great responsibilities and balances that any prosecutors has to undertake, and that's their discretion. They could look at the evidence that they have available, the witnesses that they'd have available, the likelihood of a conviction, and they could decide, as you pointed out, that it's not worth the health and safety of the rest of the nation to proceed forward with the charges. It would, again, drag this out even further. But keep in mind that being found not guilty or being acquitted during any proceeding doesn't mean you're innocent. So there are other repercussions that are going to still be attached to the former president.
If the former president hadn't falsely insisted that he won the election for so long, would his supporters have stormed the U.S. Capitol? And is that really a moot question, as Senator Mitch McConnell said, because the impeachment itself was unconstitutional? That's what he's maintaining.
Well, he's falling back on a very slim jurisdictional question, and one that he's hanging his hat on. And that issue is, can someone who is no longer in office be convicted of an impeachment charge that was brought while he was still in office? And McConnell's hanging his hat on that and saying, no, Constitution doesn't allow that to happen. So the fact that he's going to rely on that is not going to preclude other people from bringing charges against him. And again, it doesn't necessarily say that he was innocent of the charges that were brought against him. McConnell was careful to point out, not that he didn't think that Trump was responsible for what happened, but rather based on this technicality, he was voting to find him not guilty.
What about the argument that this was premeditated online, this was planned out, and that the president's words and actions that day and in the preceding days had nothing to do with the storming of the Capitol?
Well, that presents an interesting question, because the premeditation and the planning that took place beforehand, that may have been part of a larger plan to go forward. But the question here wasn't whether just on January 6th the president incited this insurrection, but whether they could prove that prior to that he was part of that planning that took place and part of what led up to the actual violence that took place on the 6th. So it's important to look at not only what he said and what he did on the 6th, but what he did beforehand, what others did beforehand, and others who may or may not have been co-conspirators with this insurrection.
Let's talk about witnesses, because it appeared today that this trial would last a lot longer than anticipated, that there would be witnesses called. Why did the two parties ultimately decide against it?
Well, it was a gamble. The Democrats thought that they would be better off to accept Trump's lawyer's concession that they should not go forward with the witnesses. It would have dragged the process out for potentially weeks, because they would have had to list witnesses, depositions would have had to have been taken. And quite frankly, what we saw today was an outcome that we already knew was going to happen. And so by prolonging it for another week or 2 weeks, perhaps the Democrats felt, you know what, we just need to bring some closure to this. The other thing you have to factor into this is that you never know exactly what a witness is going to say until you speak to that witness. You have a good idea what they might be saying, but until you sit them down and start talking to them, you don't know exactly what their words are going to be. And perhaps the the people who were bringing the impeachment forward, they thought that some of these witnesses would not be consistent with testimony they'd heard before. Perhaps they would testify to things that would actually help the president in his defense. So that's part of an equation you have to weigh into.
David Weinstein, nice to see you, my friend. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Always good to chat with you, Ruba.